On the day of our 8th anniversary, my boyfriend Oliver proposed to me with deep affection. At that moment, my mom called. She cried and told me that my dad was being chased because he offended the mob. She told me to escape quickly. I returned to the proposal scene. I linked arms with the wealthy Ethan beside me. I coldly said to Oliver, "How could someone like you, who has a heart condition and is poor, ever be worthy of me? Stop dreaming. I want to marry someone on par with me like Liam." Oliver knelt on the ground. He begged me for another chance. He knocked his head to the ground until it bled. I didn't look back. I left resolutely. 3 years later, my mother was seriously ill. She urgently needed a large sum of money for treatment. A colleague introduced me to work as a waitress at a luxury cruise party. Unexpectedly, I ran into Oliver, who was worth over $100 million. He said coldly, "Emily, didn't you marry a rich second generation? What's wrong with you? Have you been abandoned by him? Now you're resorting to this to attract men." He spoke while pouring the wine on the ground. Then he took out a check for $100,000. "Don't you like money? Use your tongue to lick the wine off the floor. This money will be yours. Let me see what you can do now." Thinking of my mother being crippled by enemies, she could only lie on the sick, relying on machines to stay alive. I lay on the ground in humiliation. After that day, Oliver offered a price of $100,000 for one night, making me his tool for releasing desires. Every time I got pregnant, he forced me to get an abortion. He even said I didn't deserve to have children. When I had my 9th abortion for him, I suddenly received the news of my mother's death. My last concern disappeared. It's time to leave. My mother lay quietly on the sick. There's no movement. Since she fell into a coma 6 months ago, she has become a vegetable. Her bodily functions have rapidly declined. I sat by the bed as usual, gently washing her body with a warm towel. "Emily," the doctor's voice came from behind. It sounded somewhat emotional. The doctor said to me, "It's a miracle your mother has made it this far. That's all thanks to your careful care day and night. You also need to take good care of yourself." I turned my head, looking at him in confusion. He paused for a moment and said seriously, "Your artificial heart's rejection reaction is getting worse. If this continues, you can only last a year at most. Right now, the most important thing is to quickly raise the $300,000 for the surgery. We need to think of a way fast. The most urgent thing now is to quickly gather the $300,000 for the surgery. We need to think of a way quickly." The towel in my hand suddenly tightened. 300,000 is a lot for me. It's an unimaginably large number now, but my mother still needs me to take care of her. For her, I have to keep going, I said with a trembling voice. Give it a try, I thought for a long time. Finally, I mustered the courage to text Oliver. "Can you lend me 300,000? The other party replied immediately. "Sure, you know what to do next, right?" Seeing this message, my stomach involuntarily twisted in pain. On my 18th birthday, I gave my first time to Oliver. He held me and said, "I hope we can have 2 children in the future, 1 boy and 1 girl, 1 like him, 1 like me." Those once beautiful memories now have become tools for him to hurt me. 2 hours later, I arrived at the bar he mentioned. The private room was dimly lit. A group of people were chatting and laughing, constantly clinking glasses and drinking. I looked around. I didn't see Oliver anywhere. "Emily, what brings you here? Do you regret leaving Oliver back then?" I heard a voice. I turned my head to look. I recognized it was an old friend. Seeing this situation, the people around began to discuss. I heard she's on the cruise. To please those wealthy people, she used quite a few disreputable means. It's really uncomfortable. She left him back then because Oliver had no money. Now that he's successful, she shamelessly comes back. It's really speechless. In college, both she and Sophia had feelings for Oliver. In the end, Oliver chose her. Does she still want to compete with Sophia now? Sophia's expression changed immediately upon hearing this. She stood up and smashed the glass in her hand on the floor. "Throw the wine glass and hand to the ground," said angrily. "Oliver's favorite person is me. Emily, you're still bothering my fiancé." She stepped closer to me. Suddenly, she grabbed the wine bottle from the table and smashed it down hard on my head. I immediately felt a sharp pain. The cold wine flowed down my neck into my clothes. It was so cold I started shivering. I looked utterly disheveled. Everyone's gaze was fixed on Sophia. She had completely lost her mind. She pressed the lit cigarette butt hard against my arm. The smell of burnt flesh filled my nose. The pain instantly spread throughout my body. She said fiercely, "Stay away from Oliver. Otherwise, I won't let you go." Sophia warned me fiercely in my ear. I gritted my teeth. Cold sweat poured down. My arm hurt like it was on fire. I felt like I was about to faint. The people around were discussing quietly. Someone curled their lip. She said with a look of disgust. Her father provoked the wife of a gang leader back in the day. As a result, he was killed. The incident caused quite a stir, like father, like daughter. They're cut from the same cloth. Sophia felt it was not enough to vent her anger. She grabbed my hair and slammed me onto the coffee table. She kicked my already bruised waist and abdomen hard several times. I could only curl up into a ball. I used my arms to protect myself. At that moment, the door to the private room opened. Oliver walked in. Sophia quickly let go of me. She retreated while crying and shouting. "Oliver, you finally came." Emily suddenly barged in. She hit and scolded me. She even wanted to harm our child. She held her stomach, feigning a look of great pain. That's right. Oliver, in retaliation against me, personally made me lose one child after another, but it made Sophia pregnant with his child, and he took special care of her. Oliver's gaze quickly scanned between Sophia and me. Then it fixed on me like a cold knife. He strode over and grabbed my collar. He forcefully pulled me up from the ground. "Emily, what exactly do you want to do?" He looked at me in pain. His eyes held complex emotions. "3 years ago, you left me for money. Now you're here to hurt me and Sophia's child. Tell me, are you doing this out of jealousy? Are you intentionally retaliating against me?" His grip tightened even more. I was struggling to breathe. I managed to utter a few words with difficulty. I really didn't. No. When Oliver heard me say that, he became even angrier. His tone was as cold as ice. "Get out. Don't let me see you again." He said this, and then he pushed me away with a look of disgust. I remembered the doctor's words. I asked him with a trembling voice, "That money, can you lend me some more?" As soon as I finished speaking, I regretted it immediately. He hates me so much. How could he possibly help me? Sure enough, Oliver's gaze became even angrier. "Why are you so greedy? All you see is money." Sophia leaned against him. She said softly, "Oliver, don't make it difficult for her. Maybe she owes money outside." She did this as a last resort. Oliver stared at me. His gaze was filled with disdain. He suddenly pulled me onto the stage outside. He drove away all the performers. The music suddenly stopped. Everyone looked at me. Oliver grabbed my hair, forcing me to kneel. He said fiercely, "Don't you want money? You need to kowtow and apologize to Sophia until she is satisfied. I might consider forgiving you." He grabbed my hair. It hurt so much that I felt faint. There was no way to resist. I forcefully knocked my forehead against the ground. I kept apologizing. "I'm sorry." The people in the audience laughed at me. Very soon, my forehead was bleeding profusely, but Oliver was still not satisfied. He kicked me hard in the waist again. I lost my balance instantly. My face scraped along the ground as I slid out. My skin was about to be worn raw. He said angrily, "Crawl around the stage." Crawl while imitating a dog barking. The sound wasn't loud. The actions weren't convincing. Don't even think about standing up. I felt like I had lost my soul. I slowly crawled forward. I didn't have any strength to resist. I trembled and let out a barking sound, surrounded by deep despair, with every step upward. My heart feels like it's going to jump out. My sweat and blood mixed together. It blurred my vision. The mocking voices from the audience grew louder. "Ha ha ha, this woman is truly hopeless. She climbs better than my dog. It's really eye-opening." I don't know how long it took. We finally finished a round. I used my remaining strength to prop myself up. I slowly moved next to Oliver. I asked with a trembling voice, "I did as you said. Can you give me the money now?" Oliver suddenly burst out laughing. He said with a mocking tone, "You really took it seriously. I was just teasing you. Don't you see your own situation? Just go already." My tears blurred my vision. It felt like someone was pushing me from the side, urging me to hurry up. In the end, I was pushed outside the clubhouse. Right when I was about to break down, when I was at a loss, the hospital called me. They told me, "My mother didn't survive the treatment. She has passed away." My last bit of hope was shattered. Everything went dark before my eyes. I fainted directly. When I woke up again, I found myself lying on the ground in front of the club. It was already dark. Oliver had his arm around Sophia's waist. He looked down at me. He impatiently kicked me. "Stop playing dead. Isn't it just money that you want? Hurry up and take the money and leave." Then, a few stacks of money slammed down on me. The sharp edges cut my face, bringing a wave of intense pain. Just before I completely lost consciousness, I used all my strength to say my last words, Money, I don't want it anymore in a daze. I seemed to see a hint of panic on Oliver's face. But how could that be possible? It must be an illusion created by my despair. My thoughts involuntarily returned to my freshman year. Oliver suddenly had a heart attack. He collapsed on the ground. The people around were terrified. I tried to calm myself down. I quickly gave him first aid. After the medical staff carried him onto a stretcher, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. I sat down on the ground in exhaustion. A few days later, he was discharged from the hospital under the cherry blossom tree. He confessed his feelings to me. I was both surprised and happy. I immediately agreed. After all, I had a crush on him since senior year. Now my feelings finally received a response. At that time, Sophia was also pursuing Oliver, but he held my hand in front of everyone. He said he definitely wanted to marry me. Since then, we became the couple that everyone envied on campus. Once at the school anniversary party, I accidentally got injured by a prop. Oliver hurriedly carried me to the infirmary, although he was very nervous. He kept comforting me, worried that I was in pain. I still can't forget how panicked he looked. Even now, it lingers in my memory. I groggily grabbed his hand and whispered, "Oliver, don't leave me, I'm in pain." After an unknown amount of time, I slowly woke up. Suddenly, I remembered what the doctor said. That feeling of despair surged back into my heart. It felt like falling into an ice hole. At that moment, I finally understood. It was just a dream. I felt like I was electrocuted. I quickly let go of Oliver's hand. My movements seemed a bit frantic. Oliver frowned and asked, "You were calling my name just now. Are you regretting it?" "No," I closed my eyes. "I don't want him to see me cry. I'm sorry. I won't appear in front of you again. I have nothing to hold on to now. I just want to handle my mother's affairs as soon as possible, to give her a proper farewell." Oliver's expression turned cold. "You really want to leave me like this?" He paused for a moment. A hint of a sarcastic smile appeared on his lips. "I heard Liam is coming back. You are worried he will see you like this, or you're afraid he will be unhappy to know about us." As we were talking, the door to the ward suddenly opened. Sophia walked in holding a report. "Oliver." Her voice trembled a bit. It sounded very aggrieved. "I struggled for a long time. In the end, I decided to let you see this." She handed the report to Oliver. Oliver took the item. Sophia continued, "Emily is currently using an artificial heart. I really don't know what happened to her. She even sold her own heart. She even joked about your heart condition before. This is just too outrageous." She looked at Oliver with concern. "Fortunately, a kind person donated their heart to you. That's how you were able to successfully undergo the surgery. This is the result for her now. It's probably the retribution for the harm she caused you back then." Oliver's hand tightly gripped the report. His knuckles turned white from the force. He held my chin tightly. His tone was clearly filled with disgust. "Emily, you really surprise me. First, you sold your heart. Now you're selling yourself. What on earth have you done that is so shameful? Have you really run out of money to this extent? I honestly don't know how to explain." Given his feelings for me, when our whole family was being chased by the gang, if I told him the truth, he would definitely face it with me without hesitation. But how can I put him in danger? I can only be ruthless and break up with him. I need to keep him away from all of this. But he got so angry that his condition worsened. He called me with his last bit of strength, begging me to see him one last time, thinking about those people's cruel methods. I could only shout at him over the phone to tell him to stop bothering me. After hanging up the phone, I secretly went to the hospital for a compatibility test. Unexpectedly, this time, the compatibility test was successful. I kept it a secret from everyone. I decided to donate my heart to him. The money I saved was enough to buy a better artificial heart, but I used the remaining money to help him pay off his father's gambling debts. In the end, I could only get the cheapest artificial heart. After the surgery was done, I was afraid that the gang would cause trouble and implicate him, so I never contacted him again. He still doesn't know to this day. The heart beating in his chest is mine. My mom found out that I met Oliver again, so I advised him to tell him about this. I did it to reassure Sophia, so I agreed to her. But when I went to find Oliver with an uneasy heart, I unexpectedly overheard Sophia and his conversation. Sophia asked, "Oliver, if Emily had any past difficulties, would you forgive her?" I suddenly stopped in my tracks. Oliver's cold voice reached my ears. "Even if she had her reasons, so what? I can never forgive her. The one I truly love is you. I made the wrong choice before. Now I definitely won't make the same mistake again." When I heard these words, my heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. Now, Oliver treats me this way. My mother has also passed away. Whether to have surgery is no longer important. I just want to leave this place that makes me sad as soon as possible. That 300,000, I don't want that anymore either. I looked at Oliver. Try to keep your voice calm. The doctor said I don't have much time left. I don't want to spend my remaining time in pain and humiliation. I'm not lending you any money anymore. From now on, let's pretend we've never met. Oliver was momentarily stunned. Then he quickly turned cold. Emily, you really think I'm an ATM? If you need money, come to me. Once used, you want to discard me. You think I'm still the easily fooled person from before. Every word felt like a heavy blow. It struck heavily at my heart. Sophia leaned weakly against him. She softly said, Oliver, don't get yourself upset. She immediately turned to me and said, Emily, don't make things difficult for Oliver anymore. He's already done a lot for you. You really shouldn't always rely on men. As soon as Sophia finished her words, she suddenly remembered something. She gently covered her mouth and said, Oh dear, I almost forgot. My scheduled prenatal checkup is coming up soon. Oliver, you should have a good talk with Emily. Wait for me to come back. She gently kissed Oliver's cheek. Oliver immediately hugged her waist. He kissed her lips. After a long while, they reluctantly parted ways. Before leaving, Sophia still turned back to glance at me. Her eyes were filled with pride. The door to the hospital room slowly closed. The atmosphere became heavy. It felt suffocating. Oliver slowly walked towards me. He said, I understand you're trying to soften my heart with those methods. As long as you satisfy me, I can give you money. I asked in a panic. Oliver, what do you want to do? I said I don't want any money. He seemed not to hear. He reached out directly to grab me. I struggled hard. The back of my hand hit the Roman IV stand. The Roman IV tube and needle were suddenly ripped off. The back of my hand hurt badly. Blood flowed down my arm. Oliver was taken aback. I seized the opportunity to run out the door. I had only run a few steps, when suddenly my collar was yanked by a force from behind. Still wanting to run, Oliver pulled me to the bedside. He pushed me down hard onto the bed. He leaned closer to me, threatening in a low voice, Your mother is still in the morgue. If you don't behave, I'll make sure she can't be buried properly. I froze completely, no longer struggling. He tightly gripped my wrist with one hand, raising it above my head. With his other hand, he forcefully tugged at my clothes. Rapid breathing echoed in my ears. I'm staring at the ceiling. My tears keep flowing uncontrollably. Every second feels like it's being stretched out. The pain, despair, and humiliation suffocate me. I feel like I'm falling into a pitch-black abyss. My soul seems to be torn apart little by little. It is what causes me so much pain. It turns out to be the man I once loved deeply. I don't know how long has passed. Oliver finally stopped. He got up and put on his clothes. His face still bore the indifference and disdain of after the act. He casually threw me a few bills, as if dismissing an insignificant person. Then he strode out of the hospital room. I dragged my bruised and nearly unconscious body. It was difficult to stand up. With every movement, the wounds on my body felt like they were being ripped apart. The pain made it almost impossible for me to stand. However, the physical pain is nothing compared to the wounds in my heart. It is simply not worth mentioning. The next day, I completed the discharge procedures. After handling my mother's funeral affairs, I prepared to leave. I just got out of the hospital. The crematorium just called. Emily, I'm really sorry. On the other end of the line, the staff hesitated to speak. They just received the notification. They cannot proceed with the cremation of your mother's body under any circumstances. I felt a tightness in my chest. My already heavy heart felt even more suffocated. I quickly asked, why wasn't everything arranged? The staff hesitated for a moment, but eventually spoke up. I heard you angered Oliver from the Johnson Group. We, as junior staff, really can't help. You should find another way. After the call ended, I rushed to the crematorium immediately. I saw my mother's body carelessly placed in the hallway. My eyes immediately filled with tears. I lost control and rushed towards the staff. I questioned them emotionally. Why did you put my mom here? What exactly did she do wrong? The staff were startled by me. They stammered. We really have no power to help. You should go ask Oliver for help. I sat helplessly on the ground, looking at my mother's body. My heart was filled with despair. I ran to Oliver's house. I wanted to ask him why he did this. It was only when I got there that I realized. Oliver was hosting a party to celebrate his 3rd anniversary with Sophia. At the party, Oliver and Sophia were holding hands. They looked very intimate. The guests around raised their glasses, congratulations to each other. Laughter filled the entire villa. As soon as Oliver saw me, his expression immediately darkened. He quickly walked up to me and angrily asked, "What are you doing here? Didn't you say you wanted to resign? What happened? Is it that you think the hospital pays too little?" His words drew everyone's attention. Everyone turned their gaze towards me. I heard she used to be with a rich guy. She dumped Oliver in front of everyone. It made Oliver so angry that he almost had a heart attack. He was almost not saved. She had hurt Oliver so much before. Yet Oliver is still willing to give her a chance. That's really generous of him. If it were me, I definitely couldn't do it. Maybe she just wants to come back and share in Oliver's success now. She wants to bask in his glory. I ignored those disdainful looks. I walked step by step towards Oliver. "Do you even have a conscience? Why won't you let my mom rest in peace? My mom never did anything bad to you. Don't you fear there will be bad consequences?" Oliver heard the accusation. A faint, cold smile appeared on his face. "You dare to talk to me about conscience when you abandoned me for a rich man back then. Where was your conscience then?" Seeing this scene, Sophia said softly, "Oliver, I heard her father was once hunted by the mafia. People from such families may not have good character. Don't let this upset you. It's not worth it. Go on." Sophia suddenly clutched her stomach. Her voice was tinged with tears. She said weakly, "Oliver, my stomach hurts so much. She causes such a fuss as soon as she appears. Did we scare our baby?" Oliver quickly pulled Sophia behind him. He shouted at me angrily, "Look at what you've done. If anything happens to Sophia and the baby, I will never let you go." After saying that, he quickly took out a checkbook from his pocket. He hastily wrote an amount of 300,000. Then he threw it at my face forcefully. He said in a cold tone, "You keep causing trouble. Isn't it just about wanting money? Here you go. Get out of here quickly. Don't think you'll get another penny from me in the future." I tore that check into pieces. He looked at me in surprise. Then, I collapsed to my knees with a thud. "Oliver, I don't need the money. I just ask you to let me bury my mother. I promise I won't trouble you again in the future." Oliver's eyes flickered slightly, but soon returned to indifference. He frowned. He said impatiently, "All you have to do is bow 3 times to me. Then crawl out of here. I will agree." Oliver's words stunned me. I froze completely, but thinking of my mother, I had no choice. I could only do as he said. The laughter of those around me pierced like knives. I trembled as I pushed myself up from the ground. My forehead hit the cold ground heavily after bowing 3 times. I crawled out using both my hands and feet. My knees rubbed painfully against the rough ground. At that moment, someone shouted, "Enough." Oliver suddenly yelled behind me, "Run! Don't ever appear in front of me again." I stood up with all my strength and ran away without looking back. The cold wind blew past. My mind was blank. To handle my mother's funeral arrangements, I held the hard-earned check for 300,000. I had lost all thoughts about life. The doctor told me, "I'm pregnant again. I had miscarried many times before. If I can't keep this one, I might never be able to have children again. But right now, I no longer care about these things." I held the pregnancy check report and walked to the seaside. I stepped into the cold seawater, 1 step at a time. When the seawater rose above my nose, I felt a sense of relief. "Oliver, we are saying goodbye forever." I was embarrassed at the party, and someone recorded it and posted it online. It immediately attracted attention across the internet. Overnight, I topped the trending lists on major platforms. I became the target of everyone's criticism. Netizens expressed their dissatisfaction and accusations. "She is willing to do anything for money. It's really disappointing. She has tarnished the image of women. I know her father. He faced misfortune in the past due to an affair with the wife of a gang leader. With such a family background, how much better can she be?" Liam, who just returned from abroad, saw someone slandering me online. He immediately stood up to speak for me. Everyone may have misunderstood. Emily's father is actually a very successful entrepreneur. At that time, the gang wanted to involve him in some illegal activities, but he firmly refused. He even bravely reported these unlawful acts. He is truly a hero. He should not be misunderstood. As for Emily, she has silently endured all this pressure, but she has never succumbed to those malicious forces. She is both kind and strong. She is a girl worthy of everyone's respect. She should not be a target of misunderstanding and attacks. Liam's words were like a big stone thrown into a calm lake. It stirred up countless ripples. More and more people who know the truth from back then are starting to speak up, to testify for his words. I did business with Emily's father. At that time, some criminals wanted to use our project to transport contraband. When Emily's father found out, he immediately stopped the cooperation. He also secretly collected evidence and personally reported it to the relevant authorities. Because of this, he offended those criminals. I used to work at Emily's father's company. He is an upright person. He treats us employees very well. He is also very caring. When he formulates the company's development plan, it is always above board. He never does anything illegal. Someone mentioned it. Emily's dad has always been actively involved in public welfare activities, donating to impoverished regions, supporting educational development. He is being maliciously retaliated against by criminals. He should not be subjected to such false accusations. The situation is getting more and more serious. The authorities have also been alerted. They quickly issued a statement affirming Emily's dad's contributions to the country and strictly prohibiting malicious rumors. Meanwhile, a former henchman of the gang anonymously tipped off the media, providing crucial evidence in the recording. The gang leader said fiercely, "Emily's dad dared to disrupt my plans. I will make his whole family pay for this. No one will escape." The public opinion immediately shifted. The comments that were originally full of attacks and denigrations, now they are filled with apologies and self-blame. I didn't expect Emily's dad to be such an outstanding person, yet he ended up with such a tragic outcome. This family really makes one feel heartbroken. Emily must have gone through a lot of suffering. Didn't that gang leader say he would deal with her whole family? I really don't know how they managed to get through it. That's why Emily left her boyfriend back then. It was probably to protect him. Oliver was busy handling work in the office. Suddenly, he saw this news. His hand trembled. The pen fell to the ground. Ink spilled everywhere. He quickly took out his phone to call me, but there was only a busy tone on the other end. No one answered. He kept dialing, but no one picked up. How could this happen? He muttered to himself softly. His face was filled with surprise. After a while, he drove to my house. On the way, he couldn't stop thinking about our past. Those sweet memories and later unpleasantness flashed before his eyes like a movie. It made him feel particularly uneasy when he finally arrived at my house, but he found the house completely empty. He couldn't find a trace of me anywhere. Just as he was pondering why I suddenly moved, he suddenly remembered Liam speaking up for me online. Oliver seemed to understand something. His expression turned ugly all of a sudden. He coldly laughed. "Emily, are you in such a hurry to leave with Liam?" As soon as Liam heard that I was missing, he was extremely anxious. He immediately mobilized everyone he knew to help find me. He was running around the city. He didn't spare any street or alley. He even went to all the places we used to frequent, fearing he might miss any clues that could lead to me. He searched everywhere but couldn't find me. There was no other choice. He had to go find Oliver. He ran to the Johnson group. No matter how the security tried to stop him, he charged straight into the president's office. As soon as Oliver saw him, his expression turned very ugly. Liam didn't even say any pleasantries. He directly asked, "Do you know where Emily is?" Oliver let out a cold laugh. He said sarcastically, "Didn't she leave with you? Now you're pretending to ask me about her whereabouts. Are you messing with me? She embarrassed me publicly for you back then. She completely disregarded my feelings. And now you still have the nerve to appear in front of me." Liam felt furious upon hearing these words. His anger boiled inside him. He rushed forward and grabbed Oliver by the collar. He shouted loudly, "You have no idea what's going on. She left you back then because her father got into trouble. He was being hunted by the underworld. She wanted to protect you. She didn't want you to get involved. That's why she chose to leave." Upon hearing this, Oliver was taken aback. He was momentarily stunned. His eyes widened in shock, but he quickly put on a nonchalant expression. He struggled to break free from Liam's grip. He said coldly, "Stop making things up here. You two teamed up to deceive me. You really think I would fall for it? Such a forced excuse. Only you could come up with that." Oliver turned his head away. There was a hint of hesitation in his eyes, but he still wouldn't admit it. Just so happens, his phone rang. It was a call from the police station. He frowned. With a question in his mind, he answered the call. His face immediately turned pale. The police said to Oliver, "They found my body, and the last call I made before my death was to him. They want to know what our relationship was." Oliver's hand holding the phone shook a little, but he still insisted. This was a trap set by me and Liam to take revenge on him. Liam saw Oliver's expression while he was on the phone. He felt both anxious and angry. He shouted, "At this point, do you still not believe it? Her current situation is unknown. Can't you let go of your meaningless resentment? Liam's face turned pale. His eyes were red. He felt both angry and anxious about Oliver's stubbornness. He quickly turned and left the office, hurriedly walking towards the police station. Liam rushed over immediately. The police seriously played the surveillance video of my suicide for him. In the footage, my frail and helpless silhouette. It deeply pierced Liam's heart. The police handed him the prenatal checkup report that had been retrieved. They said, "We also found this," the police said with a heavy tone. "We received a report that someone was going to commit suicide. We immediately searched carefully along the riverbank, but we still haven't found her whereabouts." Liam heard this sentence. His legs gave way. He collapsed onto the ground. He held his head in his hands. Teardrops flowed uncontrollably, repeatedly mumbling. How could this happen? How could this happen? His body kept trembling. His heart was filled with guilt and regret, thinking about why I wasn't found sooner, wondering why I couldn't be protected better. Oliver originally came to see Liam make a fool of himself. He saw the video content when he learned about my suicide. He felt as if he had been struck by lightning, frozen in place. His lips trembled slightly. He wanted to speak, but couldn't say a word. His eyes were filled with fear and disbelief. The police officer cleared his throat. He organized the materials in his hands and seriously announced, "Based on the current situation, we can basically confirm that Emily has passed away." Upon hearing this, Liam and Oliver shouted loudly at the same time, "Impossible." Liam suddenly stood up and quickly walked up to the police officer. He tightly grasped his shoulders, saying with a trembling voice, "Please search again carefully. She must still be alive. She must still be alive. She is so strong. How could she easily give up?" Oliver came back to his senses. His voice trembled slightly. "You must be mistaken. She won't die. How could she just leave like that? I still have questions to ask her. How could she?" His voice gradually became softer. In the end, only sobbing remained. Oliver recalled the things he had done to me. Those embarrassing scenes kept appearing in his mind. He remembered how helpless I was when I pleaded with him for my mother. He also recalled how he had ruthlessly hurt my pride multiple times. He tightly grasped his own hair. Teardrops flowed uncontrollably down his face. He collapsed onto the ground. He kept repeating, "I was wrong. I was really wrong. How could I treat her like this?" Just then, Sophia hurried over after hearing the news. She saw Oliver in a daze. She hurried over to comfort him. "Oliver, don't be too sad. The words aren't finished yet." Oliver suddenly stood up. He glared at her and shouted, "It's all your fault. If it weren't for you constantly criticizing from the side, how could I have done those things to her?" Sophia was startled by his appearance. She quietly defended herself. I just care about you too much. I don't want you to be hurt by her again." Oliver couldn't hear it at all. He continued to shout loudly, "Is this what you call love? This is clearly selfish. It's jealousy." Liam heard Oliver blaming Sophia. Finally, he couldn't hold back anymore. "You harmed her, and you harmed me too." His eyes turned red. He suddenly rushed towards Oliver. He raised his fist and swung it. He shouted, "How can you still blame others? This is all you're doing, you scoundrel." Liam shouted angrily. Every punch was filled with deep hatred. Oliver was beaten back by Liam. He staggered backwards unsteadily. Blood quickly flowed from the corner of his mouth. His face also showed signs of bruising. But Liam's fists kept swinging. The police saw this scene. They rushed over immediately. A few people had to pull Liam away together. Everyone calmed down. "This is a police station." The police shouted sternly. After coming out of the police station, Liam and Oliver were like madmen. They still refused to give up. They continued to look for me everywhere. They ran all over the city. They asked everyone who might know me. They wouldn't let any clue slip by. Sophia kept following behind Oliver. "Try to comfort him. Oliver, don't do this anymore. She is gone. You need to pull yourself together. There's still me and the kids." But Oliver is filled with guilt and longing for me right now. He doesn't want to talk to her at all. He shakes off Sophia's hand. He walks away without looking back. It seems he didn't hear her at all. A full 2 weeks have passed. They still haven't found me. On that day, Oliver wandered the streets in a daze. He accidentally saw Sophia on a date with a strange man at a cafe. The two looked very intimate. He started to doubt. He secretly hired a private detective to track Sophia's daily activities. As a result, he found out Sophia was indeed having an affair behind his back. The test results he secretly got confirmed it. The child Sophia is pregnant with is not his. Oliver is extremely angry. charging up to Sophia with the report in hand. He slams the report heavily in her face. "How dare you betray me?" Looking over the report, Sophia's face turns pale. Her lips tremble as she tries to defend herself. "Oliver, listen to me." But when Oliver pulls out a stack of bed photos again, she can no longer hold it together. She collapses onto the ground. She starts to cry loudly. Oliver smirks coldly. His tone is severe. "You admit your mistakes, then you better come clean. What else are you hiding from me? Tell me everything." Sophia knows very well how Oliver deals with people. She isn't sure if he has discovered other things. Now she dares not hide anything anymore. She says, I knew all along. Your heart was given to you by Emily. She did it to pay off your father's gambling debts. I had no choice but to install the cheapest artificial heart. Once, I accidentally overheard her talking to her mother in the hospital. I learned that she planned to come clean to you. So I deliberately asked if you could still forgive her. Oliver heard this. He was completely stunned, as if struck by lightning. His legs went weak. His knees buckled. He almost fell. He stared at Sophia. His eyes were filled with rage, as if he wanted to burn her to ashes. "It's all because of you. You are the one who killed her." He suddenly lunged forward. His hands tightly gripped Sophia's neck. Sophia's eyes widened in terror. She struggled to pry his hands away. Her face showed a look of pain. He said, "Even if she didn't commit suicide, that cheap artificial heart, it doesn't have much time left, but it has survived. She borrowed money from you back then. It was for heart surgery. It's you who caused her death." Oliver suddenly let go. Sophia fell to the ground, gasping for breath. After Oliver learned the truth, he was stunned. His eyes were vacant, as if he had lost his soul. He slowly crouched down, holding his head in his hands, crying heart-wrenchingly. Sophia listened to that cry filled with pain and regret. She felt very unconvinced. She looked at Oliver's disheveled appearance and couldn't help but say, "Oliver, don't think I know nothing about the things you did behind my back. I'm fully aware of everything. I have always treated Emily poorly, not just because I'm jealous of her, but also because I had already discovered your affair with her. I hate her. I also hate you. You always say keeping her around is for humiliation and revenge. But I know, deep down you still love her. Everything you've done is just a way to deceive yourself at this moment." Oliver finally understands. He has never truly let me go. His so-called revenge is merely a way to mask his inner affection. But what use is that? It's completely meaningless. That day, I slowly walked into the cold river water. I felt increasingly dazed. I thought my life was about to end, but it seemed like heaven had no intention of letting me go. A fisherman cleaning his gear by the river accidentally saw me jump into the river. He immediately jumped into the river and rescued me. He took me to a nearby hospital for emergency treatment. After emergency rescue, I finally escaped from danger. The fisherman knows I live alone, no one to rely on. He sympathizes with me. He took me to the remote fishing village where he lives. Life there is calm and simple, far away from the noise and troubles of the city. It also helped me forget those bad pasts. I help the fisherman with household chores every day, taking care of his mute wife and 10-year-old daughter. I do my best to help with small tasks within my ability. Life is simple and grounded in this small fishing village. My body gradually recovered, and I slowly adapted to life here. I thought I would spend the rest of my time here peacefully. One day, Liam came to this fishing village. He asked around everywhere, going through quite a lot of difficulties. He finally stood in front of me. He looked at me. His eyes turned red all of a sudden. He hugged me tightly and said, "Emily, I finally found you. Do you know how hard I've been looking for you? Where have you been these days? Why did you suddenly disappear? Not even a message. Do you know how worried I've been about you?" I looked at Liam. My heart was filled with mixed emotions. It took a while before I spoke. "Liam, I'm doing quite well now. You should go back." Liam stepped forward quickly. He grabbed my hand and said, "Emily, I can find you the best heart and the best doctor. You deserve a better life." He held my hand tightly, as if letting go would make me disappear. I shook my head slightly. I smiled helplessly. I've lost all expectations for life. The pain of the past has exhausted me. For me, days like this are enough. Plain and simple, no harm. But Liam didn't give up. Since then, he often came to the fishing village to keep me company. Every word he said, every action he took, felt like a warm light, wanting to illuminate the shadows in my heart. As time passed day by day, Liam's persistence and companionship gradually touched me, until one day, I looked into his sincere eyes and gently nodded. and said, "I'll go with you." Liam excitedly spun me around in his arms. He left some money for the fisherman as a thank you, and then took me abroad for treatment. After he accompanied me to finish that scene back then, he had to go to Country M for family reasons, to avoid dragging him down. I took the initiative to cut off all contact between us. To be honest, I never thought I would see him again, let alone that he would fall for such a disheveled me. In the final stages of life, I seemed to want to indulge just this once, go with the flow. 6 months later, Oliver only found out I was still alive. Liam posted a photo of us vacationing in Sanya on social media. I didn't expect Oliver to come looking for me so urgently after seeing the photo. He walked up to me, suddenly knelt down with tears streaming down. Crying, he said, "Emily, I was wrong. I shouldn't have misunderstood you. I shouldn't have hurt you. Since you left, I've been regretting it every day. I hope you can give me another chance to make amends." "Okay," I looked at him, feeling very calm inside. I said lightly, "Oliver, let's just let the past go, but I won't forgive you. I have a new life now. And I have people who truly care about me. You can go now." I finished speaking, then I turned and walked away with Liam, leaving Oliver alone on his knees. Later, I heard that Oliver and Sophia broke off their engagement. Sophia was disliked by everyone for her scheming and misconduct. No one liked her. In the end, she could only leave the city quietly while pregnant. Oliver, to make amends for his mistakes, sold all his properties and shares. He donated all his assets worth hundreds of millions to charity, to help impoverished children and patients. After he dealt with everything, he went to the temple and became a monk, deciding to repent for the rest of his life. But for me, none of this matters. Life is too short. Life is too short. From now on, I want to live for myself.